Hi everybody, Adam here from REH and welcome to I think it's our 6th episode on the YouTube platform. So this week's episode is all about the science of why something converts, and we're going to share with you some great tips and tricks on using this, tips on when we're using the inversion drum to get the Cali all the way through to the end with no problems. So yeah, so we've got some great little tricks and techniques that I'll go through and the order in which I use them and explain why I do that. And so hopefully we can get that Cali all the way through to the end. So let's get started. So I hear a lot of people saying some terms that aren't quite accurate, especially when they're starting out and they get questioned by a potential client when they're offering options. Oh, well, how does it work? And they'll use terms like the liner gets pushed down the pipe. Now that's technically true if you're doing sectional relining and you're pushing them into place, but not when we're inverted. And so a liner inverts like this. So we pull the liner through the head and we fold it back and we clamp it off, and then we seal it all up. So when air is introduced into the inversion drum, it's essentially a sealed pressure chamber, and then the two curves, the start of the inversion, air acts on that inside face and creates a lateral pulling force, and it's like an inversion force, as demonstrated here with this little cat's bum. So this is just tied off in knots. So air is acting on this here, and as it tries to spit out, it creates a pulling force that pulls the liner through itself, and then essentially, obviously, blows off. But that's it. That's the key term. Air is acting on the inside face and creates an inverting lateral force. It pulls it along, it pulls itself laterally, and then will invert inside the pipe. And then obviously, if we're doing a standard shot, blow off, then we put the Cali through. Now, there's some things that make big liners and small liners a bit difficult. So I'll just show you here now. So small liners, that's my terrible drawing as usual. So we're inverting this way. And this is a small diameter liner. So that turn here, because it's a smaller diameter liner, is essentially a smaller surface area. So say if we're going at 0.4 of a bar, because it's 0.4 of a bar, it may not go, because 0.4 of a bar might not be enough because it's only acting on a smaller area. So the pressure might need to go up to create a big enough inverting lateral force to pull it along. And also, that's not just the only limitation with small liners. So you've got a smaller area, there's the first thing. And the actual space within itself, because it's a smaller pipe, these friction, because essentially they have to rub against each other, because there's less space, you get increased friction. So that's why smaller liners require a higher pressure, as opposed to a bigger one. Now, as you can see here, if this was, say, 6-inch, 0.4 of a bar, it would quite easily invert, because just look between the two. The two areas that I've highlighted, this one's much bigger. So you've got the same pressure, but it's acting on a bigger area, therefore creating a bigger inverting lateral force. And that's also coupled with there's more space. So this is key. This is why big liners go in at lower pressure and tend to be much easier than smaller liners. So yeah, that's the difference, guys. And there's some key takeaways there. It inverts, and because of that point of inversion is under pressure, it creates an inverting lateral force, which will then pull itself through the drain. So yeah, I hope that sort of clears it up. There's no pulling in, there's no pushing, or we're not dragging them in. It's inverting itself, and they're the differences between the bigger diameter and the smaller diameter. And this may sound a bit deep and technical, but it's not. It's the fundamentals of our occupation. And I'm not the best seller or presenting to potential clients when I'm working with companies. But I sometimes get wheeled out and presented to the clients, because knowledge is power. When you, as say a salesman for a big reline company or plumbing company, this knowledge, when you can stand there confidently in front and present options, they're going to see it in you. and they're going to see your confidence and your technical ability on how to explain the job. And I can bet you'll probably get the job over the person that uses words like push, stutters, and doesn't really know how the inversion process works. So learn about it, because it could pay dividends in the bank account as well. So yeah, that and it's just good to know because I'm a geek. So I hope that cleared the actual science behind why liners and calibration hoses invert. And I'm going to move on now for some great tips and tricks for installers on getting this cali through that liner, because that's also very, very important, because we don't want to have any failures. Okay, so stay with us and we'll move on to some free advice. So the first key factor when inverting a liner, just say for instance we've got a 40 meter inversion put in. When this point of inversion is at the halfway point, at the 20 meter point, that's when it's got its maximum amount of friction, because it's just come off the drum. This is 20 meters, but that means that you've got 20 meters of liner touching itself against inside. And the way we reduce its friction is by oil. I love using washing up liquid, but if I'm at all worried, I use oil, because that's going to fully lubricate it. Make sure you lubricate all surfaces so there's no dry spots, and that gives this point of inversion the best chance of getting through, because it's got minimal resistance due to the friction caused. Okay, so start understanding that when this is at the halfway point, that's when you've got the maximum exposure to friction. Okay, so oil every time if you're at all worried. Okay, so I'm gonna just picture a scenario now. So we've just shot a 25 meter 4-inch liner, standard hot cure downstream shot. It's got 190, 290, 390, 490, and then we're terminating in just before a shaft. So we've got camera access on the shaft, and we're using say a HC120, so we've got a good 2 or 3 hours to get this cali in. So we're confident, but we might get stuck along the way on these 90s. Okay, so here's how I do it. So just say we've gone past the first 90, second 90, and we're getting stuck on the third 90. This is how I do it. I start off by simply boosting that pressure. I'll take it right up to just before the PRV is blowing, and I'll just let it sit. I won't work her. I won't start working her or slingshotting her or adding water. I'm just going to raise the pressure, and this, it may not seem like it's moving, but it's creeping all the time. Then what I'll do, let all the air out, and I'll boost it again. And again, I usually boost it about 5 or 6 times. That's my first like call to action, should I say. First technique I use to try and get it through. Okay. And then if that don't work, and the reason I do that first is because I'm not working the wheel. So I'm not stressing the cali. I'm not compressing my rope and hose, and it's all getting, like when you work a, say if your hose, it can start biting into the other bits of hose and getting caught underneath. So it's the least invasive or destructive way of doing it. I just boost her, just watch it and be ready to catch it again if it does go. Drop it down, booster, drop it down, booster. And then if that don't work, I move to what I call the slingshot. So what you do is you say you're stuck on the 90 there. I want to bring it back about 4 or 5 inches. So what I do is I drop the pressure right down, because again, if I'm pulling it back on the wheel at high pressure, I'm doing a lot of damage to the what's his name. So I'll bring it back at 4 or 5 inch. I'll then grab it on the wheel, right? I'll have it on the wheel, and then I'll boost the pressure. You can see it boosting. So I've boosted it to just below the PRV, and then it's going to slingshot much faster than it did then. But it's going to slingshot, and every time it hits it, it'll be opening it up a little bit more. So the keynotes are, when you do the slingshot, drop the pressure right down, so it's only just got a little bit of air, roll it back a little bit, bring that pressure right up, holding it on the wheel, and let go. And then it'll keep, it's like a slingshot. But make sure you're not rolling back at high pressure. You'll be doing damage to your rope and hose. So we try the slingshot method over and over again. Okay, now if that don't work again, then we turn to working it. And essentially you want it at high pressure. So you want it at high pressure. It might not work very well. And all we do is we just work like that. And it's just like repeatedly trying to get through that 90. So that's your next port of call. So we've tried boosting her, slingshotting her, then working her. But the working her method does sometimes bite into your rope and hose, because it as you imagine, your rope and hose is like that, and this is being pulled at high force and can start to bite in to the rope and hose. Now, if that don't work, you could be doing this for like, say, 20, 30, 40 minutes. So this is when we're starting to get a bit antsy. We can, if it's a downstream shot, like I said, we can put some water in her, like put the rope and put the hose on, turn it on, build that water up, and then you're physically going to have a lot of water going into her, and that's going to create a head pressure and let it go. So that's the 4 methods, and that's the order of which I do them. And the reasons are because I don't want to start trying to like just, you know, get the rope and hose all tangled up and put a lot of stress. So I tried boosting her, then the slingshot, then the working her, then adding water, and then if that don't work, do an emergency dig and get hold of that liner. But yeah, they're the 4 key methods I like to go with. So some tips to maximise your chances of success for getting that cali through. The first one is getting the most direct line of sight with from here to the shoot area. You don't want a big sweeping curve, because if you have to work or slingshot her, you're just adding a huge restriction and friction into her. Okay, so the most efficient way, going straight at it, that's the best way. You shoot your liner, you've oiled up all your cali, you've oiled up all your liner, you shoot your liner, get a load of this and pour it physically down the liner, especially on boundary traps. That's a great little trick. Another one is what I think does work is you can actually warm up if you're doing a super long shot with your rope and hose, you can warm up your hose so it's nice and flexible and it's not stiff being dragged through. There's another good little tip. And it's all these little things that are going to help you. I think I've got everything. We've gone through our 4, we've done our boost, we've done the slingshot, the working her, and then the water, and we're using oil. We've got direct line of sight with the shot area, and all these little things are maximising your chances of success of getting that cali through to the end. Okay, so I hope you took something from this. I'd love it for any feedback, anything you see I could do better, any tips you'd love to share, because like I say, stronger together, I think we should all help each other out. I think it's such a difficult trade. If we all help each other out, we'll be stronger for it and put a better product in the ground. So tune in next week and enjoy your lining, guys, because I do. See you later.